So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the do's and don'ts while working with female athletes. So this is going to be more or less like a conversation with the points based on a lot of experiential knowledge that has come, combining both of our years that have spent, especially working with athletes of different demographics across the board. So sir, just to get your view, what is the main difference when it comes to working with female athletes and male athletes?
Okay, now when it comes to female athletes, the first thing that comes is, of course, the bodies are different. Okay, so physical differences. Second becomes the mental aspects, and sometimes just the way maybe a female athlete thinks or behaves, especially due to the hormonal changes at a certain age. And I think maybe a third difference between the two would be how female athletes are perceived in society versus male athletes. There are changes happening, of course, in India especially. It's a different country, the approach is different compared to maybe in the Western world. So I think things are changing, but still, generally between a female athlete and between a male athlete, you'll find that there's a bit of a difference in the way they get sponsorship, or whether even the amount of matches that are watched, or the stardom that they get. Of course, some, including in badminton and other sports, have really sort of crossed that line and gone to the next level. But in general, still there are some challenges which exist.
So in your experience, is there a difference while working with female athletes versus working with female non-athletes?
Oh yeah, of course. The biggest difference becomes that female athletes, one thing, and I think this is for a lot of male coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, to remember that a female athlete will have a good body compared to the average girl out there. So that becomes the main difference, that they just have good bodies which are muscular, toned, sometimes really attractive, right? So that is a byproduct of their training. It is not that they train to look good. They train and they happen to look good. Their bodies happen to be like that. So that becomes the first thing. And the second thing which is different between female athletes and the average population amongst girls would be that the clothes that a female athlete wears. Okay, now short skirts, tights, very body hugging swimsuits, for example. This obviously the average girl on the street who's maybe going to college or somewhere else would wear, but two things would be that they have a choice to wear or not, and secondly they might have a good body or not. But here's somebody who would have a great body, who would also be wearing these clothes while playing, because that's part of the play, and because of this the confidence that they have is also very different. So these become the main differences between somebody who's an athlete or a non-athlete.
Okay. So what would you say are some common points to keep in mind, especially while working with female athletes?
What I've seen over the years, and things that I always teach and ask a lot of young coaches to keep in mind, are three main points, three trigger points that can sort of cause problems. One is the touch. If you are working with a female athlete, there is no reason for you to touch her body, okay, unless you're a physiotherapist, unless you're a surgeon, who has to do maybe a surgery. So there's a touch component. A physiotherapist who needs to maybe do passive stretches, or who needs to do releases, and if it happens to be a male and is doing that, then that is one of the requirements of the job. And there too, even for a physiotherapist, if they are going to work on, say, some areas like maybe the upper pec fibers here, or they're going to work, say, on the rhomboids, or any treatment they're going to do, it still has to be a bit careful, because and one of the simple rules about this touch is, even for physiotherapists who are watching this, I would say, remember that you have to first inform what you're going to do and then consent. Make sure that there's consent, that they've agreed, so then there's clarity what you're going to do. And some areas, like maybe the inner thigh, if there's an adductor strain and something has to be done, sometimes it's maybe good for you to think that, do I have to work personally with a touch component, or can I use some other maybe equipment like a foam roller or a ball, a tennis ball, to ask them to release that area. So touch becomes one component which physios also have to be careful. Strength and conditioning coaches, in my opinion, have no reason to touch a student's body. Over the years, when I now think of it, I don't know when was the last time I actually touched a female body, because there's no reason. They're exercising, I show them the technique, they train. If they win, maybe a handshake if they've come back after a good competition. Otherwise, there's just no reason. So you have to be very careful of this as a strength coach, because this is something that can trigger. So touch becomes one. The second becomes speak, how you speak, right? So one can say it's like your hands, second is your tongue, okay? So how you speak to them. Sometimes because we spend a lot of time, we kind of forget that this is a girl, and this is a girl who's not your friend, just because we're commonly there with them. So one has to be a bit careful of that as well, that yes, we can be funny, but we should sometimes know that we end up crossing lines when we're funny. So you have to be extremely careful of that as well, because again, this can be something that can trigger. You always have to think of it that, if somebody had to complain about you, what would they say? So they would say that this person touched me inappropriately, and I didn't know about it, or they said something to me which was inappropriate. And the third, which is sometimes a bit hard to explain, but is the look. And I have spoken to female athletes, and I many times ask about this, what is it that makes them maybe uncomfortable? And this I ask so that I can know and I can teach others, what not to do. So many have said that, the look that comes from various different people, sometimes it can be the coach themselves, unknowingly or maybe knowingly. Now we don't know. I'm not passing judgments. Maybe sometimes it's unknowing, but the look, where somebody looks at, maybe if they're wearing a skirt and they look at the legs, or while talking they're looking, not in the eyes. And so these are sometimes, for a male professional who's working, these can be subconscious things which even they're not aware. So because we're working in a system which is very sensitive, this region, so you have to be very careful of how you look as well, making sure it's eye contact or looking away, especially when some movements are being done. And I give this example a lot. When somebody is doing, say, deadlifts, where they bend forward, come up, you have to make sure where you stand is so important. Don't stand in front if they're wearing a loose t-shirt and they're bending down, or don't stand behind. Women athletes should always know where you are, your positioning. So these become the important parts, how you, if there's no reason, in my opinion, to touch as a strength and conditioning coach ever, okay? There's absolutely no reason, I feel, to touch the body. For a strength and conditioning coach, the second is how you speak, and third is how you look. Make sure you're on the safe side on all these three.
And I think another very relevant topic would be, what are the things to remember when you're traveling with a female athlete, or even during competition where you're accompanying them?
Yeah. During travel, now one of the difference that happens when people travel is, unlike daily practice where you come from maybe home, and you come to your workplace coach, the female athlete comes from home, goes back home. Now what changes in a travel environment is that there's overnight stay. That overnight stay could be in a hotel, you're staying in your room, they're staying in their rooms, maybe in a hostel, we don't know. But definitely both parties are staying outside their houses. So you might be having dinner with the students, which normally doesn't happen, they would go home. So that changes. And when that changes also, the time spent also changes. Normally you come for work, you do your job, by the time you leave, they've gone home. So you get to spend some amount of time, some amount of leisure time as well. We train with them, and then we also talk a bit. But when traveling, there's maybe the flight, then or if there's bus travel, then you're together, train travel. So there's a large part of the day now to be spent together. One has to keep in mind that you are not traveling for a picnic. You're traveling for a competition or for a camp. Because sometimes in that whole fun environment, when you're going there, it can seem like, okay, we're here to have fun. And people forget why they're traveling. Are you traveling really for a competition, or is it just a fun trip out? So one has to be very clear. And I think students can forget because they're young, they get carried away. we coaches have to remember this, that what are we here for. So that becomes one of the differences during camp. Another difference is that because you're traveling and there could be some problems that a female athlete is facing, could be whatever, and she needs to maybe speak to you. Now let's say it's 9 o'clock in the evening, you've had dinner, everybody's relaxing, and there's a athlete who says they want to come and speak to you regarding something, or you have to go and speak to them. Make sure there's a female attendant with you. You should not be going to their room alone, nor should they be coming alone.
Okay.
And if they come, and even if there's somebody else, the door has to be open. So these are just, like I said, you have to always think, what if something goes wrong? Okay, so this makes sure everything is safe. There's a bit more awareness. Best would be to meet down in the lobby or in an open place where people are aware. If it's some private conversation, she wants to share something which is maybe a bit personal, she has some problems, again, no problem, but one has to know that speaking has to happen in an open place. You don't want to be in a place where people might think like, why did you ask the person to come into your room behind a closed door? And that can create so many doubts. So I think that is one of the important parts. And again, remembering that while traveling, your actions and your intentions, and this is what I always tell a lot of young coaches, your intentions could be very good. If somebody says, I'm having maybe some tightness in the shoulders, or I have this problem and I'm just feeling sad, I'm crying, your intentions would be good. But if your action says that, okay, why don't you come to my room and we can watch a movie or something. Now one might do this with no bad intentions, but getting a person, and you have to always think, if somebody knocks on your door and people come and say, what are you doing here? Why are you here? So if it's done, it has to be informed. Okay, somebody has to know. Okay, because everything's okay till it's okay. But when the problems go to the ceiling, then sort of then nobody stands, and then there's confusion. So you have to be clear rather than create confusion when traveling. Make sure you are very, very aware why you're traveling. Okay, never forget.
Yeah. So I think with this day and age of technology being so advanced, I wanted to get your thoughts on the use of social media as well as texting and communication, especially outside of the workspace.
This is very, very important, because one of the differences now is, unlike earlier when people used to, like the day ended when your work ended. Those friends were, like I call, we had school friends, and we had then what we call building friends. So building friends we would connect with in the evening, you come back home. School friends during school. And I still remember as a kid, back in the days, sort of when school holidays would start, it was almost like we would miss our school friends, as we knew that, okay, now we'll only see them maybe after 1.5, 2 months. This has changed now, right? Now there's almost no end to when you connect. We're on the phone. There are groups, WhatsApp groups, and so many groups. So it's switched on. People, there's no downtime. Okay, youngsters come back from school or from practice, and their chatting goes on right till the time they sit in a car, in an auto, in a bus. They're on. If you see, people are just constantly chatting. Youngsters are just on because somebody has sent a message saying, hi, what's up? And then, this person saying, oh, I'm good, this, that. So it's on now. Okay. This has its own pluses and has its own drawbacks. Pluses are that we can stay in contact with the students, okay, most of the time. Drawbacks are that you can stay in contact just for no reason. Like sometimes your privacy is gone. There's no time now where it ends. Okay, when does your shift end? Sometimes there's no time. A student could call you at 9 saying, so what about tomorrow's practice? What time? Now, earlier possibly it was sorted before the day ended, right? At 6 p.m. if you went home, then the student knew tomorrow I'm training at this time. But now it's like, okay, we'll discuss later, and you text me, I text. So it just goes on. So there's no downtime. Now, we have to understand that in this downtime, which is your private time and the student's time, sometimes, and this goes especially to a lot of young coaches, somebody might text you, or you might just text, no, hey, what are you doing? Okay, and then that can lead to a lot of communication which is non-work related. So one problem is that it can lead to topics which are just unnecessary. Okay, and sometimes you might end up saying something as a joke, which is texted, one of the things to remember is that text stay, right? Like the saying goes, internet is forever. So one could even talk and have maybe a chat saying, no, oh, did you see what this person did today? And you end up speaking about a coach or somebody, one doesn't realize that that stays.
Right.
You have to always think when you send a message, and this is a general rule, when you send a message which is sometimes talking about a third person or something which is not really that great, think that message is uh, it's being telecast on a big screen, okay, and everybody is looking at it, because that is possible.
Right.
All right. When that message is sent from you, it could be on a phone and there's 10 people looking, oh, let's see what he's going to say next. Okay. So this is something to understand, that messages can, one, be misused, and second, sometimes they can also be misinterpreted. You might say something, but there's no emotion to a message, right? There's no emotion to a text. So something what you've said and what is interpreted are two different things. So we have to realize that texting, you have to be aware of it, what you say, what you don't, and know your private time. And one important aspect of social media especially is, if you take any pictures, if you take any videos that you are going to post about training, and you're going to maybe say, oh, this is what I'm proud to work with this person, you have to seek permission. Important. You can't just post. And if you take pictures, make sure the angles are such that the person knows about it. They shouldn't be something which you have decided. And even if it's for yourself, if let's say sometimes you say that I'm doing an assessment, okay, and the female athlete is doing a squat, or you're making them do a single leg deadlift, or you're making them do an inline lunge, whatever you do, she has to know. At the end, you have to show that. Okay. And all this is, see, one might think like this too much, but this is what it is. You make one mistake and you're done. Okay. These type of mistakes are not mistakes. You can't say I didn't know. Okay. These mistakes are like like doping. You can't say I took this medicine, I didn't know. You should have known. Okay. That's part of the responsibility of working with female athletes.
Okay. Again, another very sensitive topic that I wanted to address was about building a level of closeness and relationship, especially with your athletes, female ones particularly.
Yes. Now, we spend time with them, right? A lot of time. And over the years, you sometimes see them grow from small kids to, they become 16, 17, 18, and they grow up into beautiful young children. I feel, and this is my view, and I think it keeps you out of a lot of trouble. Don't make them your children. Okay. Don't make them your sister. This becomes a mistake that is made, and this I have discussed in the previous lecture, one of them, about the guru-shishya relationship. Okay. So don't even make them into your disciple, because then you start expecting, right? And sometimes it is said that, coaching is a thankless job. Some coaches would say that because you don't sort of get anything. No, I think it's an amazing job if you know what to get out of it. Okay. Coaching can be amazing if you know exactly that you're a coach. If you try to become a father, you try to become a brother, that's when you'll get into problems. Or you try to become a friend. So make sure that clarity is there. You are going there to coach them. They are not family. Okay. Then you'll also do a good job, right? And they'll also be clear. So you're there for them. You're there to maybe give advice if necessary, but give advice if it's asked. Okay. Not like family who keeps just telling, all the time. So we have to remember in relationships who we are and who the athlete is. You are hired for that job, right? You are contracted to that job. You are not doing it because it's your sister. Now, if I had to train my sister, I would train her, knowing that she's my sister. And maybe while speaking, we sometimes forget what we say, But is that how I should be training somebody who's an athlete? No, right? So this is something people need to understand. One is that keep the roles clear. The second thing becomes that, from a perspective of training, the relationship sometimes, even if parents tell you, and this happens occasionally, somebody will come and say, sir, हमारी जो बच्ची है बस इनको अपने खुद के बच्चों की तरह समझो, and I always make this joke, it's a repetitive joke that I keep cracking and say that no, मेरे खुद के 2 बच्चे और बच्चों का टेंशन मत दो. Like tomorrow you'll say, start paying their fees and this, that. So I keep cracking this joke just so that clarity is there in the beginning. That child has come to me as a student. The child has not come to me as a child. I'm not here, to raise that child. So that clarity, and it's sometimes maybe not doesn't sound the best, but that's the best approach to have. Okay. Another thing which happens, with that closeness is when somebody sort of maybe grows up, and this I've explained, especially with this happens more with younger physios and strength coaches. Now let's say there's a physiotherapist or a strength coach or maybe even a nutritionist, a male who's probably between the ages of 20 to 30. So they are pretty young as well, maybe unmarried. And there could be students, who are similar age group, maybe 20, 22, whatever. And because of the time spent together, right, of traveling, maybe sometimes, connecting, sometimes this can happen where these are young kids, right? They can just, lose track. And like I say, when we were in school, this used to happen. And with a lot of kids, this happens. When you're in school, you have what's called a crush, right, on your teacher sometimes. You just feel, oh, that teacher is so beautiful, and you just think like, wow. And you just have that is the age, you are not knowing why you're doing it. It's just that it's a crush. You are so mesmerized sometimes, by those personalities. And again, because you're spending time as well. So sometimes some young student might be so awed by you, so mesmerized by you, which is okay, but you need to know that that is also part of the job. Somebody gets mesmerized doesn't mean you have to think of yourself as some, Bollywood hero or something, that, I'm this cool guy and there's, so many girls who talk to me. Something to also remember is that, when you get so much respect from girls, from mothers, they are only giving you respect because of the role that you play. So play that role amazing, get more respect. But don't get carried away thinking that, all these, women, all these females come and talk to me, and maybe as if I'm some, great god of beauty or something. So I think that we need to keep in mind, because one, we are also humans. See, we are also humans. Men who coach are also regular people, but we have to remind ourselves, because the trouble can just change everything. Okay. So I'd say, from a relationship point of view, even if somebody else is making a mistake, you need to be aware of it. And one tip I can give is, if it ever so happens that somebody, you get a feel, or sometimes somebody says something to you that, maybe that they like you, I'm just saying, or somebody has sent you a message and it's very clear, very obvious, in no uncertain terms it's been told. You don't have to get angry, nor do you have to, sort of, get flustered with it, but you have to inform your superiors about this incident so that there's clarity. Okay. So it protects both sides. But if you hold on to it, and next if the person says, that, oh, this person goes on the contrary to think like, I asked somebody and that person has not responded, now let me teach that person a lesson, because these are all things which youngsters sometimes, go through. Okay. You need to be on the safe side. So make sure your superiors know what's happening, and always let it be known in writing, because again, there's proof. Verbal communication doesn't stay. I can tell you something and later you can say, oh, I never remembered what you said, or I forgot. It has to be in writing. So these are things, if you have a calm mind, if you have a clear mind, you can do. If you're not sort of, calm, if you're not having clarity in your thoughts, then of course, a lot of times we can just do things and later say, I didn't know. You should know. Okay. That's why you're hired. Any problems that happen, you have to have the answers before the problem. You can't say there was a problem and I didn't know what to do. You should have known. And the whole idea behind this video is to help especially youngsters, right? A lot of young physios, trainers who join, it's a very cool job. Strength and conditioning has sort of that glamour attached to it. It's all about gym, bodies, sweating, Instagram, so it can sometimes get very sort of, fascinating, and people just lose track of it's just another job. It's just another job. Don't let the glamour get into the head. Okay. And don't let the beauty around also, affect you nor others. Make sure you keep a check on this. So relationship wise, yes, I said, don't become a father, don't become a brother, don't become a lover. Okay. These are personal relationships that athletes have by themselves. We are not here to sort of fill those shoes. We are here to be strength and conditioning coaches. Just remember your role.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I think all of these points are so relevant. And like you mentioned, without having this kind of clarity, mistakes happen. And us being professionals, these mistakes are unforgivable. So I think even for the ones watching the video, I'm sure that all of these points have definitely given you a lot of clarity. And yeah.
I'll also add to this, okay, something else, for athletes, more than athletes, for strength coaches to remember. There's a saying, you reap what you sow, right? So let's assume if somebody makes a mistake in today's time, where everything's out there, right? You end up sending a message to somebody, just in the night you're bored and you just think, okay, what do I do? Send a message or something. You have to be careful about that. And the reason is because if you make a mistake today, okay, it can haunt you a lot later. And we know of cases, where there are medical doctors who are in prison rightfully, there are very famous cases out there, people who have molested young students. And sometimes you think, what made them do that? Didn't they know? But that's simply because they let their personal side and their professional side get mixed, and they did some evil things, absolute evil things. So one has to be very clear that there are, you have a side, like I say, for a young physiotherapist or a young SNC coach who may be outside, he goes for a coffee, or maybe somebody who likes to go for a drink on a Friday night or something to a pub, or goes for a dance. Now he or she, I mean, that guy would look at maybe, other young girls because he's also young.
Right.
But when he comes back to work, okay, the next morning, these are not those girls who you saw in the club. Okay, you're not here to dance with them, you're here to train them. So one has to understand that what is done now can have an impact on your career later on. And just think of it this way. Let's say somebody who's made a mistake, worked well, you've been an amazing person, in your work, and then when you sort of decide to retire, 60 years old, 55, whenever you decide to retire from coaching, and then there are cases which come up and somebody says, this is what this coach did to me or said to me, and it comes out, and then there's a case filed on you. Now at that age, when you're older, when you want to retire, you're running around the courts. Whatever little money, we don't make a lot of income, but whatever you have now is going to be spent on cases. So it has a lot of long-term impact. Okay. So I kind of tell a lot of people that, when you coach somebody, don't think of that person just as a student as well. Sometimes also think, if you have a sister, you have a mother, think how would she like to be trained. So if I'm coaching a girl, and if my daughter one day when she grows up and trains, how would I want that trainer to behave with my daughter? Okay, where I should be happy, I should know that this guy is good, he's good in his job, knows exactly what's to be done, and is very polite, well mannered, but he doesn't cross lines. My daughter feels safe. That's the person I would want. Okay, I don't want somebody who's too friendly, right? I wouldn't want somebody to be doing touching and explaining exercises to my sister, right? Why? Because I wouldn't feel comfortable. So if we don't feel the same, for what our sister would want, then just do that what is supposed to be. Or like I said, long term, there are impacts, of this, and you don't want to get into trouble or be running around courts and having a bad name. People look at you as if, oh, this is the guy who, has this problem. And then this is bad for business as well, right? You make a mistake, you're not hired the next time, right? If you have a gym that you're running, then people sort of stop coming because people feel unsafe. And in the age of the internet, nothing stays hidden. It is on, right? If it's out there, it's just on. So be extremely careful. This is a very, very, I think, important part of coaching, which I feel, in my opinion, a lot of people, maybe even universities, don't focus on. We are taught how to do testing, we are taught how to lift weights, we are taught how to do design programs. So we are taught about this, and the intention and idea, of course, of this whole course is to help people know not a course in strength and conditioning, but what to do with that degree, right, later on. What to do even before. This should be known. Imagine a guy who's very good at his subject and goes and ends up, trying to be like a brother, or gives advice on a player's personal relationships. And this has happened, many people get into trouble because of the fact that they start listening to the stories of the athletes of like, what is happening in their personal life, or they're having a breakup, or they're not talking to their boyfriend, girlfriend. That's none of your business. But you have to also understand that this exists. Okay. And one more point I'd just add to this is that uh, we should not pass judgments on people's personal lives. It's not your right. Because again, traditionally, when we look at it, it becomes like you see a girl, especially if she's grown up in front of you, and you see at maybe 18, 19, they connect. Now that's the parents' job.
Right.
If they connect with somebody, they're exchanging messages. It's not your role. As long as in the gym they're training well and going out, you've done a great job. So sometimes, trying to be too much than what your role entails is also what is tricky. And sometimes earlier I said about the speech part, we also have to keep an eye on what you say to them about their dressing. This is something very, very important to understand. We have no right to talk how a female athlete dresses.
Okay.
Because it can be such, that you've seen them only in sort of regular clothes every time. One day you've gone for dinner with all the students traveling at the airport, and they've come in which clothes that they're comfortable with. Now you cannot tell them that no, oh, these clothes are maybe a bit too exposing. Why are you wearing this top or this? Do you have a right? And again, you might think I'm only saying this for their good. Okay, I'm only being a nice person. I'm like an uncle who's telling, are you an uncle? You're not an uncle there. Okay, so even if your intentions you think are good, you don't have a right to tell a third person. What if they tell you that they don't like your clothes which you wear? Would you be liking it? No, it's your right. As long as the clothes are legally allowed, I don't think anybody has a right to speak. So we just have to be on the right side of the law, follow and do things, according to the legal system, and you're in the right framework. Don't do anything which is illegal. Don't do things which are emotional. Right, which are just, you're emotionally, you think like, but I wish good for you. I'm there for you, and like, it's all about the heart. No, it's you're hired. Never forget that you're a hired, and then between the two people, there's money that is involved. You are giving that service because you're getting paid. You are not doing a favor. So I think that part, if we remember, everything falls into place. You're waiting for that check at the end of the month so that you can run your house, and then you do a good job. You provide good service. You are not doing something because it's your sister. With your sister, mother, there's no payment or something that comes, right? So yeah, these are some of those points, and I hope this helps a lot of the young coaches especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And rightfully said, I think many of these things are knowledge that you pick up only through experience. It's not really taught anywhere as such. And by the time many of them learn these lessons, often it becomes too late and their career is over. So
Absolutely. One mistake and it's done.
It's done. Yeah. And so I hope even for our viewers here that you've gotten a lot more clarity about the importance of understanding that the technical side of strength and conditioning is only a part of the big picture. There is so much more that goes into it, such as, your behavior, your communication, and so on. So yes, I hope that you were able to get a lot of value from this video, and we'll see you in the next one.